Welcome back to another episode of Obliterated Companion. You guys, another interview today from the Air Force. Captain Paul Young, played by Eugene Kim, is joining me today. How are you doing, Eugene?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. We finally got something that worked for the both of us. So yeah, happy that you're here. Let's kick off with this real quick. The show just came out not too long ago. There was a writer strike followed by the SAG-AFTRA strike, and so actors could not promote anything that they were working on, past or present, and from Struck Studios. And so when the show comes out at a very uh timely time. I think that's how that works. That term works. But you guys are able to kind of promote, but then you guys also get like this kind of soft premiere, like a screening with Netflix. What has that reception been like leading up to the show's release following the strike, right? Because then you got billboards popping up, posters. What was that week like for you?
I mean, it was definitely on brand with our show, Obliterated. It basically was a countdown because the strike ended the day of our actual premiere in Vegas that we couldn't go to because it ended on that day. And we were all bummed, and you should have seen our text thread. We're like, do we take a last minute trip? Should we go out there? We're like texting with our showrunners, and they're like, we wish you were out here. And we're like, well, it's only an hour flight, and it was just a lot. We were contacting our reps, and it was just a little too last minute. And so yeah, thank goodness Sony hosted our premiere, and it was amazing. It ended up being a really it turned out the best it could have happened. I think like it all just kind of happened all at once, and the billboards came up, and we started seeing the commercials, and obviously the text messages from our friends and family and the people that we haven't spoken to in a while. They were all kind of rushing in. So yeah, it was definitely in good old Obliterated fashion, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I love seeing the pictures of like your sister and your mom, at
Yeah,
the screening as well.
yeah.
They seem pretty darn supportive. I believe your sister was like one of my first like early followers when I started
Oh,
the
really?
account.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not surprised. Yeah, she's a cancer doctor, and so she's very like, when she notices something, she'll like, she'll kind of pay attention to it, and especially if it's something that she cares about. And she's so, she's my best friend. She's someone who has definitely supported me throughout my whole entire career, and yeah, no, she's the best. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that dynamic. Now you've been around for some time. One of this is so funny that you're on Obliterated, but one of your early credits is voice acting for the 24 video game.
Yeah, that was my first voiceover. Good research. That was my first voiceover gig. That kind of broke me into voiceovers. I wasn't even thinking that I would be a voiceover actor. And it's funny because actors always ask me like, how do you get into it? And I could never answer that question because I just kind of fell into it. And yeah, so how that started was, well, I had not planned on being an actor when I was in college. And I went to college in Los Angeles, from Baltimore. I came to Los Angeles for school, and I was studying psychology. And my cousin was out here doing commercials, and she was making money, or I found out you can make a lot of money doing national commercials. And I said, I want to do that. That doesn't seem that hard. And I asked her how to get into that. And she said, go to an improv school, like go study comedy. And I thought, hey, comedy, that sounds fun. Sure. So I drove. I did some research. I went on Backstage West. Back then, the internet. Wow, yeah, that was a long time ago. It wasn't like it was 2000, so it wasn't as mainstream as it is now. But I looked it up, and Groundlings seemed like the place to go to. So I auditioned for Groundlings to go to the school there, and I got in, and Yeah, I trained there, met some really funny people, and got in a sketch comedy group. It was a an Asian sketch comedy group called OPM. Randall Park, Jay Saw, his wife, just a lot of Asian actors have kind of gone through this sketch comedy group. And I auditioned. Somebody in the group told me to audition for their next sketch show. I auditioned and I got in. I was a part of the group, and I had 6 or 7 different characters, like one including there was like a cat therapy group, and I played Mannequin Echo, and like how he like was complaining about his arthritis because he couldn't, he did this the whole day, and Randall's wife Jay like was Hello Kitty, but she wasn't so like bubbly, like she was just so upset that nobody took her seriously, and um, uh, but and it was a really funny, it was a very funny, witty. OPM stands for Open People's Minds, and it was a group of very like-minded Asian American comedic actors and non-Asian actors, but it was mainly Asian American. We wanted to open people's minds into just seeing, Asian artists more than what mainstream was showing, which was all just, thick Chinese accents with, it was very two-dimensional, right? Anyway, long story short, we do the first night of performances, and there was a voiceover agent and a commercial agent in the audience, and they just happened to be the best in the business. And they invited me to come to the office and audition, and they said, "Hey, we actually have an audition. Let's try you out." And I did it, and I booked all the North Korean characters on the game, and which is wild because I'm having conversations with myself, so it was a very different experience. And yeah, that was my way into voiceovers, and that was 24 the game.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and the show Obliterated, it obviously, it kind of models that format of like an episode is about an hour.
Oh, you're right. That's well, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, 24 was
Like,
an iconic show. Like
yeah,
I don't feel like it's underrated because it was pretty popular. But it was popular because the show it's I know you know about it, but for the viewers that don't, it all happened in real time, and because it happened in real time, it created this urgency, a race against the clock. And I think what was so smart about how Obliterated is formatted, and what the big three, like the big three, the guys, they created the show into a TV series in a way where it like you do feel the urgency, even though it happens over the course of 8 hours. Um, it's just I remember when I read the script, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like I want to be a part of this. This is groundbreaking, not only just as a TV show, but as a character. You don't really get a lot of, as an Asian American actor, male actor, like we don't get parts like this, like that are meaty and just filled with so much that you could sink your teeth into. And yeah, it was definitely a blessing.
yeah. Well, we'll put a pin on the Obliterated because there's a lot
Yes.
to
Yeah.
unpack. Well, with the things that you said. Long story short, like this, my interviews are long form, and this is where we get to really learn about the actors. Um, like you mentioned, you studied psychology in college, and like that's such a whole like different venue here to start going to comedy, into acting. Like growing up, did you do any performance at all? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so
I
some
mean,
stage stuff.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's starting.
Piano. You played some
Well,
piano, I hear.
yeah. Yeah. You know that. I don't know. It's just, is it the prerequisite? Like, surely you play piano.
No, no. I just there was some confirmation on my part that okay, like he played
Okay.
piano,
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
got into
Yeah.
fitness,
Yeah.
some painting as of late.
Yeah. 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 Actually, I painted that.
Okay, okay.
It's kind of like a Rothko. I'm a big Rothko fan, so I was looking for certain colors, and it's just something that I just wanted to just wanted to try. But yeah, I played piano back in the day. It was back in like elementary school, middle school. I used to compete and won some, won some contests. And then high school happened, and you're like, well, that's not cool. I just want to belong. But yeah, when I remember when I was like 4 years old, 3 or 4, I small enough that I could stand on a piano bench thinking it was like a stage. And I remember reciting these nursery rhymes, and my mom and my dad and my sister just sitting there and just kind of like pretending to be an audience and clapping. And so, yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, I think I've always kind of been a performer. But yeah, in high school, I went to an all guys school and for 13 years. And so I it was a way to like have interaction with a girls' school across the street to kind of like mix it up. And I thought, that's a lot of fun. So I did plays in high school, and I try to be well-rounded. The school that I went to encouraged us to be well-rounded in sports and the arts. And, so I played football and I wrestled a little bit, and I even rode crew, like, but also did some plays, and yeah, loved it. Didn't think I would ever do it as a profession. Didn't think that was even something that I could do.
Yeah.
And then in college, I didn't do any acting at all. So yeah.
Well, so what made you decide to switch from like, yeah, studying psychology to acting?
Yeah, it was just knowing that you could do a commercial and make a lot of money, like
Yeah. Okay.
that sounds like fun. Who doesn't want to be on
Yeah.
a national commercial and make money, like residuals and all
No,
that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Residual completely. Yeah. I don't know anything about that, but like that's cool that you guys have something like that. I'm a mail carrier, in the daytime, and I work with so many people that have like bachelors and masters, and they're
Mhm.
like, this job is just easier, and you make a lot of money. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so I understand that. You
Yeah.
gotta, feed the family and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, having kind of like even with the voice acting, that was some time ago. Um and being Korean, what is it like for you to kind of see like your culture, the K-pop, the K-dramas, coming into
It's
like
expensive.
American culture now? Like, yeah, it's wild to me to see like there's people that for years they've only spoken American. And then like K-dramas, they're like learning Korean and watching shows like that. Well, what's that feel like for you as being like part of that culture and seeing it consumed by, non-Asians?
It's interesting because I remember when I think it all kind of started with Psy, with the Gangnam Style. And I just
Yeah.
remember being completely embarrassed. I don't know
Mm.
why. I remember being at the gym and then it like coming on and then me just wanting to like cover my eyes, like
Okay.
I just like, oh no, it's just for some reason it felt like, your crazy uncle coming into the gym and saying, well, Gangnam Style. You're just like, oh, this is so embarrassing. Like everybody, I just felt like everybody was looking at me. And I don't know. It's just something that I'm not used to because, back in the day, when you brought your kimchi to the lunch table, that wasn't the coolest thing. So I think it's this thing where you're just like weirdly embarrassed. And then you see the K-pop, and K-pop really exploded, and you started seeing K-dramas get popular and more mainstream, and you're like, whoa, this is really cool. This interest. And um actually, now that I think of it, it's probably unfair for me to say that the popularization of Asian pop culture um embarrassing me, because I remember when I was in high school, there was a sitcom. I don't know if you know this or remember this. There was a Korean sitcom on network TV called All American Girl with Margaret
With
Cho.
Margaret Cho. Yeah.
And I just remember I'm getting chills, even like I've got goosebumps talking about it. But I remember as a kid seeing her face pop up and thinking, whoa, like, whoa, that's familiar. Like, I remember just being so excited, and I tuned in and I was obsessed with the show. I couldn't, like, I always had to be. in front of that TV, every Wednesday at 7 p.m. to see Margaret Cho pave her way into this industry. And I was just so proud, to be Asian. And it was something that I wasn't really familiar with because I didn't grow up around a lot of Asian people. So yeah, no, that was a really, um, I think pretty formidable moment for me as um, an Asian American,
Yeah.
um, to be represented.
No,
And
absolutely. Representation matters. We hear the phrase, and like I think you sharing that little experience right there, I think that's very unique, and we don't hear enough stories about that. Like we grew up with these movies with a lot of like Caucasian faces, African American, and then when you see an Asian guy like Long Duck Dong, he's got glasses, exchange student. And it was like that for years. Like I always often referenced The Last Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, and how there's that moment where he's sitting in the movie theater and they're watching Breakfast at Tiffany's. The crowd's laughing at the Japanese character played by Mickey Rooney, I believe, right? And then like Lauren Holly's character, Lauren Holly, yeah, she looks over, at Bruce Lee, and he's not amused, and then she gets it right then, like this is offensive, and so like for decades, we've been trying to get it to a point where we're like we're not the butt of jokes, and it's like hey, we could be good looking too, and so I joke with my son, I go, you're growing up at a good time because we're finally trending,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and he understands that,
it's a
and
good,
so
it is a good
yeah,
time. It's a great
yeah,
time. I mean, and being an actor, being in this industry for 20 years, I've had the privilege of seeing it change and even just going into rooms and being able to get into rooms. It's changing at a pretty rapid speed. Where in the beginning it was pretty slow, but I also didn't, I was just starting, so I didn't really know, what it was like before, what it would be like or what it's like to have been in the industry and to have such limited opportunity. I just blamed it on the fact that I was beginning, but 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 yeah, no, it's changing, and um, it's an honor to be a part of that movement with Asian Americans in
yeah.
this.
I just, Kimmy and I, we spoke about Sheng Wang, a stand-up comedian, so it's nice to see, yeah, there are Asian comedians as well that can do stand-up, not just, be in front of the camera. They can,
I
you
did
know,
stand up for 7 years.
did you really? I did not know that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It was before.
Well, I mean, you did say the growlings, I
Yeah, I
didn't I
did.
didn't realize for that long, those
It
7 years.
was sketch comedy. I did it back in shortly after I started doing the sketch comedy because I was really tired. I was tired of feeling irrelevant, and I was tired of feeling like I didn't have a voice. And I had my own struggles with it. And I was performing pretty regularly at the Comedy Store and at the improv circuit, like just kind of getting gigs where I can and doing open mics here and there. But like I remember when I started doing stand up, I was like, I will not do an Asian joke. I will not do one Asian joke. And then I met up with a stand-up comedian. It was a friend of a friend, and he was kind of going over jokes. And he's like, "Why are you so against talking about how you're Asian?" That's in his quotes. He was like, "That's what the white man likes. Like that's you got to do it that way." And I was like, "Well, you're not wrong." And so I started making Asian jokes, and then I just felt really gross about it, And so I just like talked about the truth of how I didn't really know I was Asian until I became an actor in LA. So I kind of played with the idea of not knowing that I was Asian and that every now and then I would, you would have these realizations. And so, and that worked out pretty well for a good few years. And then I did that because I gigs as an actor were so few and far between. And once I broke into TV, I didn't really have the time for it. And I've been very privileged um, to have worked um, to have worked as much as I have as a Asian male actor um, with the roles that I've had because I haven't ever had to like degrade myself or do an accent. Not that I'm opposed to doing accents. I do like 90% of my voiceover gigs. Well, 80% of my voiceover gigs are in an Asian accent. And they're not comedic. They're very like, they're mostly elderly, which is funny. Like if you were to hear me, you wouldn't know, like that
Yeah.
it was um uh but yeah, but the most recent video game that I did, Starfield, I didn't have an Asian accent, and it was a straight offer, and I was like, oh, amazing, oh, that's so cool. I didn't have to audition, I got a straight offer, and I don't have to do an Asian accent. But if it's relevant to the story, and they like what I do, I am very happy to bring an accent to a character.
Yeah,
Um,
because you want authenticity, right? You don't
yeah,
want somebody who doesn't know that accent to try
exactly.
to mimic it because they didn't grow up with that. They may not even know, like I guess there's other things where like you certain regions, like you mentioned North Korean, that's very specific as opposed to South Korean. Like you gotta, and then
Yeah,
there's the dialects involved too. So like, if you want authenticity, you got to get the person that knows, the region as well.
that's right. And with voiceovers, they want to be able to dial it back or to make it thicker, especially with different characters, different ages. And one of my first audiobooks was a book called The Walled City with by Ryan Groudon, and it's about uh, the city in Hong Kong. It was like this world. It was almost like gosh, was it Batman where it was like a village, but it was like upward. It was like a very densely populated city.
Kind of like
Um,
Gotham then, yeah, it's just tall
that was
buildings.
filled with crime and it was just and it was a super challenging project because they wanted different characters with different accents and like they wanted it thicker or or they wanted it dialed back. Um, so yeah, but and I mean I find that a lot of fun, a lot of fun. But one of I did book a part Major Crimes where he had like a thick Asian accent and he was a plastic surgeon and they find out at the end that he had been faking it because it's better for business and they're like first of all your accent's offensive because you were born in Fullerton. And then I like break character. I'm like, well, what can I say? It's good for business. And it's like the funniest like turn, the funniest turn. Um, so yeah, that is the one time I actually had to do an accent on TV.
So when you do like a voiceover or not voiceover, but when you do voice work, do you have a preference? Because like with voice work, right? You're in a booth, I'm assuming, or at the very least you're in front of a microphone. Nobody sees you, and like maybe kind of some insight, like if there's pros and cons, if you prefer to be in front of the camera where people get to see you. Because I feel like if you're just behind the microphone, it's a little bit more freeing, possibly, to kind of be as animated as you can to kind of get the
Yeah.
right inflections.
I mean, I mean, if you're working from home, you can just, work in your underwear, like that's kind of, I
Just like
mean,
the way you are now. For the people that
yeah,
are
you have
listening
no
at
idea.
home,
I have
he's
zero pants on right now. Yeah.
totally in underwear. He didn't know it was going to be on camera.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no, I'm wearing sweats, so I am comfortable. But yeah, no, your question is, do I have a preference
Yeah,
or
yeah. Just because, like, I would imagine, because, well, obviously, voice work. You said you can now do it from the comfortability of your own home.
right?
So that aside, but like, just I guess it's when you have to roll, right? Like, you can be as animated as you can. It's a little bit more freeing because nobody can see what you're doing versus like being in front of the camera. Where like, is there any sort of like a reservations you have in terms of performance in front of a camera?
Um, No, no. I mean, I guess they're just two completely different mediums, and I appreciate both for what they are. I, huh, that's a really good question. I mean, there's something really freeing about voiceovers where you can do multiple characters and get lost into a character without any knowing that that people wouldn't have a preconceived notion by the way you look, you know. So yeah, I do love voiceovers in that way, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm just thinking about all the fun that we had on Obliterated that I just was
Sure.
like, man, like it's just and all the
And you're a
stuff.
gym rat too, so you kind of want to show off, like,
Oh yeah.
like pythons and stuff, right? Like, you
Well,
work hard on that body, so you want to show that off on camera.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
We didn't see enough of it. I'll tell
I
you
was
that
gonna
though.
say Paul doesn't really have to, and I was not mad at that, seeing what
Well,
everybody else did. But weirdly, there was a moment towards the end where I was like, huh, well, I feel left out. Why wasn't I naked? You know, but and they keep on joking about it. They're like, well, season two, you're gonna, if we get it, like you'll be naked the whole time. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, we'll talk about that, I
yeah,
guess.
we could blame Frank for wanting to dress Paul in layers. He talked about like the vest and all that stuff. Just adding
Oh,
layers,
it
more
was
protection.
so fun. It was my first experience with Frank. And I remember, I don't know, do you want to get into the obliterated
Let's
territory?
let's get into Obliterated. Let's do it. Yeah, we'll get a little all over the place, but go ahead, start with this
Sure,
story.
sure, sure, sure. I mean, it's just a good segue. I
Yeah,
remember, well, first of all, like when I booked it, I didn't have very much time. Um,
that
like
seems to be the DNA for Josh and Hayden. Like you get it, boom, boom. Days later, you're on set.
it's well, it is. It's just how our business is sometimes. Like it's just you have to be ready to go at a moment's notice, um, and with obliterated, it just it it just seemed it's just that's just how it's just how it worked. I got the call for the audition. Well, I guess we'll talk about the audition, right?
Oh
Because
yeah, okay. Yeah, you were gonna start with Frank, and I was gonna reel it back to like you booking that role.
okay,
Was this
we can talk about Frank then. We'll just talk about so when I walked in to see Frank, okay, I walked in to see Frank. Super friendly guy. I'm like, really excited because the building of a character really for me it kind of starts with your wardrobe because how you dress is kind of it breathes life into who this character is because you kind of have an idea and you brought something to the table at your audition. um and we tried a number of clothes on. I think in the script it said Paul, late 30s 40s, um clad in Izod, like Izod type gear, and I had to look
that's
up.
golfing gear for those people that don't know, and which you also do. You dabble in
Yeah.
golf.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just started. Like it's it when we were trying on the clothes, he was like, "No, that's not it. That's not it." And when I tried the outfit that I wore, he just could not stop laughing. He was he was he was laughing, and like I felt like as an actor, you're like, haha, but he wouldn't stop laughing. And I'm like, oh wow, like you feel kind of like insecure, but then I look in the mirror, I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, no, you're right. Like this is Paul. Like this is who he is because you don't really see or know who Paul is until the party. Before it's just, oh, he's this badass chopper pilot, and you see him in his tactical gear, and but the reveal is when you see him in his Izod. Actually, I saw a clip of Frank saying, I was meaning to send him a picture because I actually do. He mentioned a clothing brand, and I actually own
Uh,
clothing.
El Bean.
No, it's a
Oh,
catalog brand.
was this
Oh,
in my interview with him?
it was in your interview. It was in the clip that
Okay, yeah. Oh gosh,
uh
I forgot. I'm kind of mixing it up. I feel like it was like
it was a while
El
ago.
Bean was one. Yeah, yeah.
It was one of your first ones. And man, it doesn't matter. I'm actually really happy that I can't think of it because it means that it really is not part of my wardrobe,
All
but
right.
it's because my mom will buy me clothes and
Edward
it's
Bauer, Eddie Bauer, Eddie Bauer. Was
no,
that
no,
him?
I love Eddie Bauer. I mean, I am Paul, let's face it. Okay. Uh, I'll think of it. Anyway, So yeah, but the wardrobe, it set the tone for who Paul is. And it's crazy because it's even though I had one outfit, we had like six different versions of that outfit because of each episode, Paul kind of goes through a different thing. So, one, there's a little bit of dust like that needed, that they needed to make permanent. And
Mm.
then another episode, they had like prickles, and then there's another, that has blood on, had blood on it. So they had to make sure that, because we would film on a sequence. So sometimes we would shoot episode 6, then we would shoot episode 2, and then we'd shoot episode 1. And so we need to make sure that we're wearing the right outfit for
Right.
continuity.
The continuity. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so booking the role, so you talked about the wardrobe. Uh, what was it about this character that made you want to so was it an audition or was this like an agent and it's like, hey, send in a tape? I guess I don't really know how the casting and the audition works, if they're hand in hand, if they're separate.
So I got an email from my reps, and I read it and I saw Cobra Kai guys, and I was like, oh wow, that's like such a. And I've known Courtney on the show, who plays Miss LaRusso, for a long time. We've known each other for
Really?
like over a decade, yeah.
Okay.
And I so yeah, so I was a fan of the show from the beginning because I knew she was on it. I watched, to in support, and she kills that role. She's so
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 good.
so good. We had the same comedic acting coach. Well, she's not a comedic actor, she's an acting coach, but she's so, like, she has a lot of like comedic actors that go through her school. Leslie Kahn, she's amazing. I so when I saw that the guys were producing this, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be a fun one. Like, this is going to be great. And then I read the breakdown, and they described him, Paul, as abstemious. And first I have to look that up and be like, well, what does that mean? And it means,
Can you
and
enlighten us? Because I don't know what that means. I'm gonna have to look that up myself.
yeah, I mean, that's definitely,
Just
I
button up,
feel
right?
that's, but well, it's somebody who knows their limits, like who
Okay.
doesn't overindulge, which is completely not me. I mean, if you've seen pictures of me in the past, like I am like I used to be very, very big, and I enjoyed food, had no limits. I had no boundaries with food. I had no boundaries with alcohol. I had no boundaries with a lot of things. And now that I'm older, I've learned about boundaries. But but yeah, that's definitely a Bob Dearden word. I feel like Bob wrote that. Like, I just
Sounds like
hear,
it.
yeah, it calls abstemious, But I but yeah, so I read the breakdown, and I said, this guy doesn't sound the coolest, I'm like, and you kind of want, as an actor, you're like, you want to be the cool guy. But the audition it was like 14, 15 pages. It was very lengthy, and there are a lot of monologues because Paul goes through what he goes through, and each scene came from a different episode because it's very intentional. They want to see what you do with this character and see how far you go. So I just remember thinking, okay, he goes on this trip. I'm not gonna play effed up. I'm not gonna play too drugged up, because that's kind of a, like, what Robert Downey Jr. said in Tropic Thunder. Like, you don't want to go full. You just want to just be realistic. Let's just, and I do it. I work really hard on it. And then 2 days later, I get a note from casting, that they said, we need you to retape. It was a self tape. We need you to retape. He needs to be way more effed up. And I was like, okay. So I, came up with this idea. I was like, okay, I'm gonna start my audition with my eyes right into the camera. So the first thing they see is these eyes, and I'm like, and then I see a dragon, and then I'm like, And then I even like, you don't ever show the back of your, to an audition, but I was like, I like had my back like this, and I was like looking at stuff, and because I didn't have the first line in the audition, so I was just kind of like making that time like really count, you know, and it wasn't just random things. Like I actually came up with the story of like what was around me, and yeah, and then that brought the stakes of like I need to save my daughter, and it wasn't like I wasn't playing it high. I wasn't like, oh, what am I casting? No, it's like no, I have to save her. Like that's and the realism of that in the situation kind of brought the high the degree of a highness and into the character. So, and that was a lot of fun to do. I went balls out. Like the last scene was this monologue that I have with Kimmy's character, and I'm like, and they described it as a Jim Belushi rant from Animal House, and it was like this beautifully like this long juicy monologue where he's just like freaking out. He's like, I gotta save my daughter and this and that. And he's tied up, and um, uh, and I'm like sweating and everything. And then I'm like, I send it off. And I'm like, we'll see. And I don't hear anything. And a week and a half goes by, and I see in the trades Shelley Hennig books Ava, the lead of Obliterated. And I'm like, oh. And I've known Shelley for 16 years. For a very long time, before she even became an actor, which is random. I mean, they have this joke that I seem to know everybody. I just feel like I'm like, I don't
I
know.
was about to say that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's very random. But I saw, I'm like, oh man, that would have been fun, like to do a project with little Shelley Hennig. And then another week goes by, like 3.5 weeks go by, and nothing, no feedback, nothing. And I'm like, yeah, well, I messed that up. Like that casting office is never going to call me again because I went over the top.
You went too far. You didn't listen to Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, you don't go full. You don't go full. And then I get a phone call the day that I was like, I don't know if I want to be an actor anymore. Like this is like I had a lot of close calls like that, like a lot of close calls. And I don't know, I think every actor at some point says that to themselves, but I was just like,
Courtney did too with Cobra Kai. She
oh
she
really?
was like she was. There's reports that she was saying that she was almost done with acting, and then she got
Oh,
that role as Amanda.
oh man, it's
Similar,
just
yeah.
yeah, there's the fatigue is real, and there's only so much tenacity you can have for 2 decades. For me, like it was, it's been that long. And then later that day, I get a call from casting, and they say they love your tape. Um, the producers, the showrunners, they want to Zoom with you tomorrow. And I was like, for what? Wait, what project? And they're like, Obliterated. I'm like, Obliterated, because that was like a month ago, and I had to look it up. I was like, oh yeah, I went, I retaped for that. Oh, okay. And I'm like, oh, whoa, wait, that I have to relearn 15 pages by tomorrow. And I made it work. I had dinner plans. I canceled my dinner plans, and because that's what you do, it's at moment's notice. And I auditioned, and it like the chemistry with these guys from the get-go, I was like, man, I love these guys. Like they had me do it different ways, and I was like, yeah, let's play. Let's do it. Let's play. And um, they were laughing, people were laughing, I was laughing, like we were just having a blast. And it just felt so good. It felt like a great date. I don't know, it's a weird thing to say, but I remember thinking like, wow, that feels really good. And I get a call from my reps, and they're like, they loved you. They loved you. And I'm like, oh, they're like, yeah, you're gonna test the next day, tomorrow, and we'll get you details on that. But I think it's probably between you and 2 or 3 other guys. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
awesome, great. And then I wait, because I was in the morning. I wait. It's like 3 o'clock. I go to the gym, try to like clear my mind. 5 o'clock comes around. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should study. I'll study. I'll study, study, study. Like, let's get these lines down. And then 8 o'clock comes around. I'm like, I haven't heard anything. Like, and my reps are like, we haven't heard anything yet. And I'm like, okay, well, like, just don't worry, um, just be prepared. And I'm like, okay. And the next morning, I get a call from my reps, from my manager, and there's this like sigh. And I'm like, uh-oh. He's like, hey, Eugene, um, you're not testing, bud. And I go, okay. I was like, I know, like I'm used to this. And they go, Netflix is straight offering you the role. And I was
That's
like,
awesome. The
what?
studios.
I was like, wait, they're offering me what? Wait, what? What? And I was screaming. I was so excited. And they're like, the table read is next week. You gotta pack your bags to move to New Mexico for 5 months and like all over the weekend and everything. And they're like, it was just a whirlwind. It just like my whole life just kind of changed overnight like that. It was unreal. And then I go to the table read. No, actually, I go to my hotel and then I'm just so excited to surprise Shelly. And I get a text message from her, and she was like, "Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Hi." I hadn't spoken to her in a while, and she was like, "Meet me up on the roof." Um, there was a restaurant on the roof. It wasn't like a random like meet me on meet me on the roof. No, meet me at the rooftop restaurant. I was like, yeah, yes, let's catch up. And then we got into the table read. And Terrence was sat down next to me, and he was cracking me up from the get-go. Tommy was my other side. He was so lovely. The chemistry was buzzing. Like it was like Nick, like it was like it just felt so good.
You guys just clicked immediately, organically. Just
Immediately. It was so good. It was so good. Yeah, yeah, no, it was I've never felt that before in anything that I've ever done, like that kind of.
yeah. It almost sounds like when you got that role, when you got that call, it seemed like you already knew that your life was about to change. Just this
Yeah.
project. What was it? Was it because John Josh and Hale was producing? What was it about this role?
Um, I think it was just the opportunity, knowing what Paul's arc was in the story,
Okay.
and knowing how it is a rarity for um a person of my type to get a role like that. Like like I just knew I was just so grateful that these guys trusted me with that responsibility to bring Paul to life in that way.
Yeah, and you also brought something else to life, a little gremlin, you know. I don't know if you want to get into that now, but
Oh, whatever you want.
actually,
I mean, yeah.
what was any your self tapes, any of that stuff involved? Is it Zog or Zod? I guess there's still a little bit of confusion because I thought we were told Zod. It was changed to Zod in post production.
Oh, I thought it was Zog.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Because then that's why I shared like a thing with like General Zod because I think there was some clearing problems with the name Zog.
there,
So
I that does sound familiar. So, because I know that there are people named Zog out there, I think.
right,
Yeah.
right. I think it was like Tommy's friend or something. I think that's why.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
was the whole thing. Was any
Yeah.
of that part of your the 14, 15 pages that you had to learn was with that character?
No, at all.
Complete surprise.
In fact, the I didn't realize he said he so in the monologue that they actually cut this monologue out of the show initially there was no trace of this monologue. They had taken it out because they changed the sequences of the stories, and they had me tied up in like a pantry,
Oh, okay.
because I was,
Oh,
yeah, and I'm and mom it started off with like, and I'm surrounded by tomato sauce and like, and but like all I have is my vulture, my gremlin, and you know. And I remember reading Gremlin, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I just have to believe to make that believable. But I didn't. I only had the script for the first episode, so I had no idea. Like, I knew that I was eating guacamole, so I just assumed, okay, there must be some sort of gremlin that's coming after me. Um, but yeah, it was very unclear. It was very unclear in the audition. And and yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, what was the table read like? What do you guys usually do? Is it like the first episode is what a
Yeah, the
table
first
read?
episode. Yeah, the first episode. And songs. I don't know why I said that. That's without
Songs.
oh, I was like
Oh,
songs. I'm like was possessed by a Frenchman for a second. Without Maya, because they Maya was a very difficult find. They had a very difficult time finding this Maya.
there was somebody else at first, right?
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
somebody else, and then they were recast, but it was like, yeah, they had a very difficult time finding this person, and it did feel a bit incomplete without this one character. And when I remember when we found out that they had hired Kimmy, almost it weirdly for me, I'm a weirdo. It felt like someone had given birth and we were all so excited. Like that's what it felt like. Oh my gosh, we found her. We found her. We got her. You know, like we were all so excited. And then when we met her, it just made sense. We were just like, yes, yes, yes. And then when we saw her act, we were like, yes, yes. Like it's just so hard to believe that she was Taft-Hartley, which means you're brought into the Union to do this role. That being Taft-Hartley to do anything, to uh, being being a non-union actor and being brought into a union project is so atypical. Like you have to be, a company needs to be very desperate to find somebody, to do that. They searched everywhere for this girl, and Kimmy just kind of she just nailed it. She just freaking nailed it. And
There she was, just sitting in Seattle.
yeah, she was just sitting in Seattle, like, fixing toilets, apparently.
She asked you not to bring that up, just
Oh yeah. She's like my little sister. We had such a
yeah.
good time. We drove up. We have a pretty awesome scene together, which I so that was the scene that I had audition. I had my audition scene was, it's the scene where he riles her up to like become this, to try to save the day, right? And I remember like it was like a line, and I didn't feel like I feel like it would have been fine, but I also just loved Paul having this moment, and then Maya kind of like getting into it and being like, him being like, so what? Like, you don't have your tech? Like, you think that is that going to stop you? I just loved the idea of Paul like be like spearheading that moment, but also for me to have that moment of like pure, like that's my moment where I'm like, really, like, I don't know what's real, I don't even know if I'm talking right now.
Right.
I love that. And the beautiful thing about the writers, Bob and Joe and like everybody, like I remember telling Joe and Bob this, and they were like, yeah, just text Hayden. And so I texted Hayden, and Hayden like texted me back immediately. He's like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's work it out. I'll get you something tomorrow and I was like, okay, you know, and they got me something great, like it wasn't as lengthy, but it was like it was enough. It was good. It was great. It's a fun little moment between, Paul and Maya. And
Yeah.
I drove Kimmy up to, because we filmed that scene, a lot of that stuff in that boathouse. It was up about an hour outside of Albuquerque. So we carpooled and we just kind of spent some time and listened and to some Britney Spears and danced and sang and kind of like we just really bonded on the trip up, and not that we needed more chemistry, but it brought us a lot closer to do what we did for that episode.
Yeah, she credits, I mean, or references, Paul and Maya moment as like one of her favorites.
Oh, it's
Just being able, yeah, just to sit there and just go back and forth with you. Um, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Britney Spears because now I'm thinking like the Haggerty line, right? I also mentioned that to Kimmy too, like Haggerty's like Britney bitch, when he's passed out on the raft or whatever it was. Also, so I didn't. Like I don't think there's like any way for me to really look this up. Was Tommy your first on-screen kiss?
that's wild. That is
Is it?
wild that you even mentioned that, because I told my mom, uh I was like, because I was just home this past weekend, and my mom has probably watched the show more than anybody. I think she's probably watched it. I'm not joking, probably like 7 or 8 times, like, through.
Very supportive of you.
Yeah, yeah, she's very, so that's just how amazing my family is. And I remember we were watching that scene together, and it dawned on me, and I was watching it. I was like, I that's my first on camera kiss is with Tommy, and I'm like, I I actually love I love that. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, he was my first on screen kiss.
yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's kind of a big flex.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just like, oh, if that just ever, I don't know if that's ever a conversation actors are having. Like, did you have like, yeah, mine was Tommy Howell.
I
My
know,
like,
right? Who
Pony
can
Boy,
say
come
that?
on, you know,
Who can
yeah,
say that?
yeah. That now, when did you first know that that was gonna happen? Is that something scripted? Was that on the spot? Like, hey, I feel like Haggerty's gonna kiss Paul at this moment.
Okay,
We got to get
so
into it.
yeah, no, it's funny. Being on set, I mean, there's a lot of like chaos on set. There's just a lot of like there's makeup, hair, there's wardrobe. Everybody's doing like their extras, and in the school of training that I've had, I really love just really authentic moments. I mean, that's kind of a trite. I mean, not trite, but kind of like an obvious thing to say. But like, I really love like when I get emotional into a scene, like, it can be method, like I really get engulf myself into moments, and I really enjoy that process, and I enjoy when I'm caught off guard. And before they yelled extra action, I remember Tommy going, "Hey Eugene, I think I'm gonna," and I remember just being like, "Nope, don't tell me. You have my consent. Do whatever you want." And 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 that's what happened. He kissed me. I didn't realize how, because when we rehearsed it, it was just it we just he was just like young gun, like, and he just like said his lines. I had no idea that he was going to be so intimate, and that he was going to grab my cheeks, and that he was going to guide me in, and that our conversation was going to happen like that. It was pretty hilarious. But in the moment, I'm not thinking, oh, what's happening? In the moment, I'm Paul, and I'm like I have respect for him. He's my peer. Um, but he's like, Paul is a very peaceful man. He's a person that, like, he loves his family, he loves his friends, and he's not somebody that would want anything to be escalated. He's not one to like start a fight,
Yeah.
and so in my mind, when that happened, I was just like, yeah, I just went with it.
And from a professional standpoint, like, you've mentioned 7 years of stand up, but like, like improvisation, you want to take what your partner's giving you too,
Yeah,
right? So you don't
those
break.
are yeah,
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
gifts. Those are gifts. I mean, what working with Tommy. Oh, I mean, whenever Tommy was in a scene, he always elevated it tenfold. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, what was that? I always loved working with him. He's so great, and I just felt so much chemistry with that guy, and I love that guy to death. Like he's such a legend, but also just like he's just such a kind soul. Like I yeah, just love that guy. But yeah, and then so when that happened, the yelled cut. I just remember John coming out, and his eyes were like bugging out. He's like, "That was amazing." What he was like, "What was that? That was amazing." He's like, "How did you not break? Like, what? How did that was that was it? We got this. We got it." Like, and I was like, "You sure?" Like, he's like, "No, that was it. That was it." I'm like, "All right."
That's amazing. Um, so can you talk about filming with Zod? We'll go with Zod because that's the last thing John said on X, Twitter.
And also Zod is I saw that, so I was also kind of like, "Oh, that's interesting." But
Right.
I um wait, sorry, what was the question again? Sorry.
Oh, just kind of filming with him because I understand there was like what three different puppets and like did you find that challenging because it's an inanimate object?
It wasn't easy. I mean, the interesting thing is Zod wasn't he wasn't even done. He didn't even exist until the fifth episode. So
Okay.
like so my reactions in the helicopter, though there were some reshoots where they didn't include him, but my reaction shots were all to a tape that had an X on it. It was a spot.
Okay.
and and my turns were cued by somebody yelling gremlin. So I so yeah, so I didn't even know what Zod looked like until after we after I'm allowed to say, are we spoiling?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It show's been out.
Yeah. Oh, so after the helicopter crashes, I had no idea what he looked like.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
That's why. Did you feel like catfished at all like, when you actually see Zod like even dressed up as Elvis and stuff? You're like, that's what it looked like. Did you have any other like what did you picture of this gremlin when you
Well,
first?
they had sketches of him, and they're like,
Okay.
we think this is what he's gonna look like, and it was kind of like a cross between like the Gremlins from the '80s, like the bad ones, to like to like Commando or something. It was just it was an interesting it's an interesting take. Um, and then when we finally met him, I remember we were at it was episode 5, and it was at the boathouse, and the puppeteers came to set, and Hayden was like, "Hey, the he's here," and I remember like I ran over because I was so excited, and yeah, it was really exciting, and then I had to film with him, and that took then it got old. Then I was just like, okay, come on, Zod, get it together. Like,
Yeah.
you have like 3 puppeteers like moving, you got the animatronics going on like with the remote control, and it takes longer to work with a puppet, to set him up, and you're just, and it's like 5 in the morning. You're like, come on, like, let's get this done. Let's get this done. Like, I remember the scene where I'm shooting the sniper rifle like across the lake. That was all done in a series, like at the very end of the night. And I was exhausted. It was a long day. And yeah.
That may have even helped, to kind of put you in the mind space of Paul for that moment as well. One of the funniest moments of Paul's, like he's trying to kill this fucking gremlin,
Yeah.
but he's hitting like the bad guys by mistake, and it's like these guys just keep getting in the way. It's just
That's absolutely right. So I mean, that's yeah, Peter, you nailed it, because in the school, like from like acting classes, like you really use like your frustration, like of the moment, like if it's there, use it. Like, come on, like, what, these guys keep getting in the way. Like, I need to shoot this gremlin, it's a funny moment, and it's all real because it really is like, you put into the frustrations of what you feel into a moment. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah. End of the day, you're probably a little delirious, you know, probably not really on shrooms, but like Paul's delirious right now,
Oh
you know.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then there's a lot of pressure when it comes to acting. And it's just you. It's just you, and there are like 50 people on set, and their night ending is dependent on you and you nailing it, you know?
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of like relaxation and focus and all that. And you know, for some reason, that's just those pivotal scenes end up being the last things filmed, you know. And you know, the scene where I had what I think is my last conversation with my daughter in the helicopter was all done at the end of shooting. It was the last thing shot. I was like, of course. And you know, they want this like tearful, heartfelt kind of experience done, like in like in a couple takes. You know, they were like, we got to get this done. Come on, like it's like let's get there. And it's such a chaotic experience because I'm in this helicopter. It's daylight, so they're shining artificial light into my like face, and there's a camera right outside of the helicopter looking in, and there's a tennis ball dangling to where my daughter is. My daughter's not actually there. She's not actually saying her lines. The lines are being fed to me by the script supervisor. And so I have to imagine saying goodbye to someone I really love to a tennis ball, you know, and I have to do it in like very quickly because a lot of people want to go to sleep, you know.
Yeah.
So
So where do you draw the emotions from? Because like those that felt real, right? Obviously, it's so beautifully written. I was sobbing. I was sobbing during that scene. Like I was legit crying. I was like, oh, I was wiping away real tears because like it was just so
wow.
believable, and it's just so
That's like
amazing
that's
that
honestly the best. That is the that makes that thank you for that because that makes me feel good that you not that you cried, but that you were touched by it.
it was very emotional.
Yeah.
We spoke off mic. Gosh, no, I'm sorry, I'm mixing up details. Like whether you know this, I mean, I'm a dad of five. I have
Yeah.
a daughter that is 21 years old that I don't see a lot of,
Yeah.
and so like when Paul's speaking, I'm like, yes, I have been away from my family, and like Paul, like he's also a man serving the country, and this is a very tough situation. He's about to do this big thing and having this big talk. It just felt very real,
Yeah.
relatable to me, but
Yeah.
just like the emotion, it felt real. And so like for you to like, oh yeah, it's at the end, like oh, we got to get this done quick. It
A
just felt
tennis
like
ball and your that's your focal point, and you know it's I can only attribute it to like I am so grateful for the coaches that I've had in my past. Like Leslie has taught me so much. Catlin Adams, who taught me like the Strasberg method. She's very like all about relaxation and about just being able to authentically feel these emotions and how to you know kind of conjure them up. I you know for years you know you train how to because she trained uh Zoe Saldana in Avatar.
okay,
So a lot of our training had to deal with what how would you do a scene if there was no scene partner, or if like it was very much about imagination and creating the world around you and being able to yeah work opposite nothing. And because I had done that for years, still, I mean, it wasn't easy, but because it wasn't a foreign thing to me, and they were like, okay, this tennis ball is your daughter, I was able to do it. And, you know, with the work that I've done with that scene and with who Paul is and who his daughter is, it was all I needed was to relax and focus, and it worked. It
yeah.
just worked. Yeah.
The training kicked in, so it's not like you had like a table read with the tennis ball and built like any sort of chemistry with it
Yeah, yeah, no.
to do
I'm
afterwards.
like cradling the tennis ball and kissing
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
feeding it.
I I don't want to eat up too much of your personal time, but maybe just a couple more sequences of
Sure.
Paul, to shed some insight on the diner fight brawl. Let's talk about like what you kind of remember from ordering a plane. bagel or muffin? Plain muffin?
Up in- Yeah.
Plain muffin, all the way to being in a chokehold by Beatrice.
Oh my goodness. That was one of my favorite episodes to film. I mean, each episode had its moment. Um, but it was fun. What's great about what the guys did with the show is that they paired, like, you never really see us with the same pairing. Like they kind of like, you see me with Gomez, you see me with Kimmy, you see me with the guys. Like, you see like how we all um, how our dynamics work as characters. And that was a lot of fun for it to be, as Allison said with the girls' day, for us to have a boys' day. And even though Nick and T's character, they're not the biggest fan of Paul, we had a blast. It felt so it was so much fun. The diner scene, and we were lucky to have a really great stunt coordinator and stunt guys, and um, they flew in my friend Hayden Lamb, who's such a talented uh, stunt guy who I met. He was my stunt double on the Rookie. It was so cool to be able to have him come out there, and they were like, "We got him," and I was like, "What? You got him? Like, that's so cool." Um, uh, and he was just the best. Like, really just kind of helped me learn how to like to make the punch to the gremlin pass, and the whole fight. It was so much fun. It made me realize I want to be a part of projects that have like fight sequences like that. It's so much fun. But yeah, when we were doing that first scene, the scene where we sit down and we do our order. I mean, T has like so much to order, and he's just so funny,
The whole
and
menu.
the whole menu. And there was a take where he he uh I don't know what he orders, and then Beatrice goes to me and she's like, "And for you?" And then I look up at her and I'm like, and I go, "Oh, yes." And then I look and I'm like, no, I know what I want. What do I know it. Oh yeah, I'm going to no, and like T and Nick, they go and they look away because they're holding their breath, and I'm like, I know what I want, and literally there's like 10 things on the menu. There's not even that much, and like Nick is like he puts his hand in his hand, and I'm like this whole time I'm hoping that they use this take, but it really is just too much air, and I get why they didn't use it, but like, and then after all that time, I'm like, yep, I'll get the plain muffin. It's just it's just a funny moment. It was just a really funny moment, but the way they cut it was hilarious, and it was the way it was supposed to be. But we just
I,
had it was just a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so
I kind of like that long version because it just adds to like Trunk getting even more angrier and angrier. Because
yeah,
um
that's right.
when I spoke with Joel, I should probably put his interview out sooner than later because he did episodes 3 and 6, and so
Yes.
but he had shared because I didn't pick up on this. He said every episode Trunk is supposed to get like aggressively hungrier and hungrier, and so
Yeah.
I just thought like, yeah, the man's hungry, he just needs to eat. But Paul's, like him being impatient with Paul ordering, I think that would just add even more to it. But it was already earned as it is.
It is already earned, and also it's like, there's just so much to cut out of an episode, and it wasn't the most important part of like the storytelling. It's just kind of funny. It's a funny moment,
Yeah,
but
yeah. You
um,
mentioned enjoying fight sequences. What can you share about being tied up, or Paul and Blast being tied up, and all of that sequence? Zach did share that it wasn't him when you had to flip
oh
over,
yeah, it was
obviously. Yeah,
for me. It
but
was
just
it was Hayden. Hayden, my son double.
oh,
He literally.
Schlossberg, Hayden Schlossberg. Wow, he
Oh
really
no,
got
not
into
Hayden
it.
Schlossberg. No, Hayden Lamb. Hayden
Yeah, yeah,
Lamb.
yeah.
So Hayden flies in, and he's like, "Hey man, thank you so much, like, for hiring me." Like, he's just the nicest guy, such a talented guy, such a generous human being. He comes in, he walks on set, and they're like, "All right, we're doing this rig. This is your first stunt." And it's the chair stunt. That was his first like experience on Obliterated, and they're like, we're doing this chair flip and it's rigged with like a police, and it's just, and like three guys like, lifting it up in the air, and it's just insane. It's just crazy. Like I being tied up was, I was gonna say fun, but that's a little kicky, but it was,
I mean, it can be.
yeah. But it was, I mean, it was like, it was fun. Um, talking about like, how I like honest reactions. Like I want it to feel real. Um, uh, the guy who played Gleb, like he's, Neil, he's so talented. He plays a good bad guy. I remember him asking me, telling me, he's like, "Hey, how hard do you want me to like, And I was like, go for it." He's like, "Go for it." And I'm like, "Yeah, just, yeah, smack me around, like, do it." Like I want this to sell. Like the punch that wasn't real. And but like everything else, like there's a moment where he like slaps me in the face, and you see my head, and he slaps my. And after that take, America comes up. She was like, did you like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I'm sorry. I probably should have told you. I told him to do that. Like, and Neil was like, are you okay? Like that was really hard. Like, he's the sweetest guy. And he was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Okay. I'm like, yes, I'm okay. Do it again, Like, and then America comes over and then tells me like, like she was such a great director. She like gave me so much to work with, and she was like, the moment like he waves the card, he's gonna go to your daughter, and who knows what he's gonna do. And then she leaves, and then I'm like there, and I'm like, no, no, this is because of me. Like, this is all because of me. Like, you're gonna, like, this is all gonna happen. So it was terrifying. It was fun. That whole day was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So many great sequences involving Paul. A lot of like kind of subtle comedy too. Just even in lines, like you kind of like like you deliver these lines, and like if nobody's paying attention, you can go over their heads. Like the Big Willie, all right, talking about like let's go see this guy, not knowing that
Yeah.
it's an actual strip
Yeah.
club.
Yeah. Just kind of like playing it super, like kind of dry, kind of flat, kind of real, not flat, but real. And, um, you know, like I remember when there's a line where like, oh, somebody's definitely got their fuck on in here. And she's like, nobody got their fuck on. And then the line was, somebody definitely had sex in here. Um, I, in my mind, I was like, he would say fornicate. I was like, yeah, somebody definitely fornicated in here. And then nobody laughed. And then I changed it to sex. And then Hayden, Slothbury said, say fornicated. That was great. And I was like, okay. And everybody, and it was written in a way where it kind of felt like Paul could have said it in disgust. But like I kind of felt like, oh, he's a father. And I don't like, it would be funny if we went the other way. And he was like, yeah, like he's almost like a detective. Like, yeah, somebody definitely fornicated in here, you know? And then like, even with like when Ava pukes, like, he's like, look, he's like, yeah, there definitely chunks of quesadilla and pineapple. There are chunks of quesadilla? Yeah, no, yeah. He kind of like, wait, what was the line? It's like, there's definitely chunks of food in there. Is that a piece of quesadilla? That's it. Yeah, there's definitely
I,
chunks.
that reminds me of like you had commented on something I shared, and you said, "Oh yeah, the puke was real. They had to like CGI some of
Oh,
it
I was,
out."
no,
Yeah,
that was a joke. That was a
so
joke.
I believed you, and then Paola was like, "Hey, stop playing." I was like, "Oh, he's messing with me." She's calling him
I
out
was
on it.
messing with you.
I really like seeing your guys' interactions on my posts. I was like, they're having fun.
I love it. I was like, I felt bad because I was like, oh, I think he thinks I'm serious, and then Paula wrote was like, okay, good. And then, but I also kind of wanted it to go viral. Like, I kind of wanted like people to think, oh, wait, like Shelly Hennig actually puked. Like, I kind of,
So after that had happened, I learned how to use people's comments as reels. I haven't done one yet, but I was like, oh, because I was like, oh, that would have been an opportune moment, that oh, hey, Eugene Kim says that this, I could have used that in over
yeah,
footage. So maybe in the future, if you keep commenting. We'll see. That might end
And
up
we'll
on
see.
something.
Yeah, we'll see how that works. That's so funny.
Yeah, yeah. So as we get ready to wrap up, is there any sequences that we haven't discussed that you kind of want to just share some behind the scenes, some improvisation that maybe wasn't on paper and like, hey, let's do this, and then it just became like, oh wow, like this was like the choice to go with kind of thing. Like the kissing, right? Right. So didn't know that was not scripted.
Yeah. Trying to think.
I do like me some Haggerty and Paul though. Like I like their
There was
introduction.
more. I almost wish there was more, but every time we had our moment at the end and Zod talks to him, um, I don't know. There is a moment that I was like, uh, one of my worst. We can talk about my worst moment on set.
Okay, yeah, something challenging or you sure?
Yeah,
Worse, your
there
words.
there was a day where I just had crazy like brain fog, like I couldn't think, and like I didn't have COVID yet, but I did end up having COVID later on in the shoot, which only that actually lasted like 3 days because yeah. But anyway, I there was a line where I have to say I'm going to sacrifice myself, and the
Right.
line
Yes.
is I hope so, but my daughter's in the city. If the only way to save her life is for me to fly this nuke into the desert, then like there's no question in it. It's my decision to make, you know. Um, and I could not get that line out. And I think they have like a blooper reel of it somewhere because I think I had maybe 10 takes of me saying this line and I couldn't say it. I kept on saying, I hope so, but my daughter's in the desert. If the only way to save her life is for me to fly this nuke into the city. And then I was like, and then I said, oh man, I'm not a terrorist. And then everybody started laughing. And then I could not say my daughter's in the desert. And I kept on saying my daughter's in the desert. My daughter's in the and then I see Shelly holding her breath and she's and she's in the back. I'm like, and I could not sit and everybody's laughing. It's again the last thing to be shot in the day. We need to make our day. And there was a lot of pressure. We finally got it, but it was like, so now people still you know, joke with me to this day. They're like, your daughter's in the desert. Yeah. Now, speaking of daughters, who is this?
And now my daughter is in the room. This is
What is a
Kenny.
what a great segue.
Yeah, yeah. I totally
Hey,
planned. I was like,
that
hey,
was
when he says
crazy.
daughter, come in. So
Hi,
this is what.
she's so cute.
Yeah, you just wake up from a nap.
I like your glasses.
Thank you. Daddy, my glasses, they don't have a
Okay,
scratch.
that's good. There's finishing up. Okay, I'll see you when I'm done. Okay, say bye. Say bye,
Nice to
Yankees.
meet you. Nice to
Okay,
meet you.
up and out.
Penelope. Yeah, she. Okay. All right.
Hi,
Bye.
Penelope. Oh, what a cutie.
Thank
Oh,
you. Maybe, yeah. We hope to maybe she'll be our ticket to retirement early.
yeah,
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 yeah.
definitely.
So
Yeah.
that yeah, anything involved with like like one of my buddies, Mike over at Cobra Kai Wisdom, he when the show came out, he shared something about Paul and saying like Paul is the dad in all of us, and so just super relatable, even if you don't have kids and you're an uncle, or something like that. And then we can relate just being such a busy person and not being quote unquote there present for our kids' lives. And so like that moment was very it just it felt very real. And then the exchange from the helicopter, it's yeah, it's did not expect, because when you hear like Josh and Hayden are kind of going back to their roots, the hard R comedy, but like people are also like, oh, this is nothing like Cobra Kai, but the character stuff, that's in their DNA, character
Yeah,
driven. Everyone is the star of their own story.
yeah.
And Paul has his moments. Holy shit! I did not expect to sob and bawl. Just, you
It
know?
really
And,
just catches you
yeah,
off guard. Yeah, it
yeah,
really
yeah.
does.
It really does. And I think my co-host watch party, he was just like the gremlin. That's like that caught me off guard, and that's like the most amazing thing. Like he just loved that.
Yeah.
Just not something you expected.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of heart in this, and there's a lot of people really don't know. Like people aren't reading between the lines. There's so much to read. like the fact that you have that this show is ultimately about unity. And, you know, in our culture right now, there's so much division.
Yeah.
And what I love about our show is that it doesn't discriminate. And in fact, it really does bring people together because, you know, we are a team that we have different philosophies, different backgrounds,
Ideologies.
ideologies, and, you know, we disagree, we argue, we're screaming at each other, you know, there's so much, but at the end of the day, in order to beat the bad guys, you know, the people that want to divide, which is ultimately what the show is about, we defeat them by uniting. We do it together. And there's something really beautiful about that. There's something really beautiful about, hey, you know, you and I don't agree with a lot of things, but we can certainly fight together and we can win, you know? So I I really, I don't know. So far, I'm really so proud that this show has been number one, you know, globally last week, and that you know, we'll see, you know, how it does for the rest of the month. And I really hope that people not only laugh and that they enjoy themselves, but that they can actually really understand what the meaning of our show is about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point to end because I got the camel and the gremlin behind you signaling like, "Hey, time to wrap up, buddy." You know, so
Nice, nice.
yeah. Eugene, thank you so much for carving out some time to speak with me. I really love kind of picking your brain about your craft. You know, you're so
Yeah,
passionate, you know,
yeah.
about your work and like hearing how your mind operates and all that. I love it. So that's why I like doing these companion interviews is because it's like, yeah, it's cool. We get to see like the stuff on screen and like Netflix releases all these little fun behind the scenes stuff. But not often do we get like really long form interviews to really hear them kind of get into the psyche of their characters. And so really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed myself. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. If you welcome the interaction, where can listeners give you a follow if they don't already?
You can follow me on OnlyFans. Just kidding.
Yeah, you and Adam Hirschman, you know, like yeah, you know,
oh,
he's working on getting his.
oh, really?
I
It'll be
asked
me.
him
It'll be me and Zod. Me and Zod we have our own OnlyFans. No.
a dual OnlyFans.
Yeah. No, you can find me on Instagram and newly on Twitter. Eugene Sam Kim
Very simple. Yeah, that's your brand. So both handle for the same one. Yeah.
for the same one. Yeah, that's right.
All right. And for anybody that isn't already following me on Instagram, I am at Obliterated Companion Network. If you guys want to follow the other things I do, Cobra Kai, Twisted Metal, things like that, and X/Twitter, whatever you're calling it these days, Obliterated Pod. Very easy to find, pretty active, I feel. And Eugene, I did see your very first tweet, even though you
Yes.
started the account like years ago.
Yeah, well, I started it because I actually had one before and it got somehow hacked and it's somebody still has it on. So I just created it just so that I could say this is me. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.